Hey there, welcome to SI Now. It is Tuesday, December 27th, and I'm Maggie Gray, alongside our SI Now NFL analyst and Super Bowl champion, Chris Canty. Chris, you've spent the entire season telling us about NFL players and teams, but we want to hear a little bit about you. We want to hear about Super Bowl 46. This will be one of two flashback adrenaline performances presented by Toyota. Let's go places. So let's go back to Indianapolis, but we'll make a pit stop because leading up to those playoffs, the Giants were in two must-win situations. Final game of the season, you play against your former team, the Dallas Cowboys, in an absolute must-win. What do you remember about that game?
Well, it was an exciting game. I remember that the NBC flexed the game from a 1 o'clock game to the 8:30 game because it was a do-or-die scenario for us. And just going against my former teammates with so much on the line, it was excitement. It was an electric atmosphere in MetLife Stadium. And I just remember both teams getting after it. But ultimately, it was our defensive line led by O.C. Umenyiora, Justin Tuck, and Jason Pierre-Paul that ended up being the difference in that game. We were able to collapse the pocket consistently around Tony Romo, force some mistakes by that Dallas Cowboys team, and ultimately Eli Manning with Victor Cruz and Akeem Nicks were able to capitalize on those mistakes with some big plays in the passing game.
I want to talk about that line a little bit later on, but you head to Indianapolis. You're playing against the New England Patriots. Now, the Giants had just beaten the Patriots in the Super Bowl. You were not a part of that team, but what were the conversations that you guys were having leading up to the game?
Well, we had the confidence that we could do it because a lot of those guys from that 2007 Super Bowl year for the New York Giants were still on that team. The core group of players were still around from Super Bowl 42. So everybody knew that we could go up to Indianapolis and beat the Patriots. A little bit interesting, though, when the pep rally happened with the New England Patriots, Tom Brady said they would be bringing a trophy back from Super Bowl 46. So during Super Bowl week, I kind of made some headlines myself, and I guaranteed to win a parade on Tuesday, the 2 days after the Super Bowl when we got back. And I'm just glad that my teammates had my back and made my prediction come true. And we had an awesome parade, 3 million people going down the Canyon of Champions. It was just unbelievable atmosphere, being able to win that game and then come back home to New York City, my hometown, and being able to celebrate a Super Bowl championship.
History has looked kindly on that prediction.
Yeah, exactly.
You're lucky, Chris, because we would have rolled that tape forever.
I'm telling you.
Okay, let's go back to that D-line. You mentioned how they were able to get to Tony Romo, but what they did to Tom Brady in the Super Bowl was really magnificent. Describe what you were seeing being on the field at the same time. As you said, O.C. Umenyiora, Jason Pierre-Paul, and Justin Tuck had career games.
Absolutely. We pressured him early and often. Remember, we got a safety early in the game, and our defensive line just continued to come. Linval Joseph, also a part of that group, playing an integral role in terms of stopping the run and then being able to collapse the pocket from the inside. Rocky Bernard, Dave Tollefson, some key reserve guys that we had coming off the bench on our defensive line rotation. Really, we had a deep group, and we needed everybody to get the job done because our front four set the tone in terms of how our defense played and ultimately the success of that 2011 season.
I was there covering the game, so I was watching from a press box. What I remember the most was the Mario Manningham catch on the sideline.
Absolutely, unbelievable.
But what was your most memorable moment from that game?
I think it was the Hail Mary that Tom Brady tried to throw to Rob Gronkowski. It felt like the ball hung in the air forever. But ultimately, it was an incomplete pass, and just feeling the confetti fall and celebrating the championship and my parents coming on the field and just everybody going crazy. It was an awesome feeling. It was like a dream come true, and it was just unbelievable.
And now you're a Super Bowl champion for life.
For the rest of my life,
Chris,
Super Bowl champion.
Thank you so much for going down memory lane with us. That's a really good one.
Thank you, Maggie.
All right, last week we brought you the first part of an unguarded moment that was so good it couldn't be contained to just one chapter. The subject was legendary boxing announcer Jim Lampley's favorite fights. Pretty good. Now, let's jump into the ring with Lamps for round 2 in another SI Now Unguarded Moment.
George was my expert commentator on HBO Boxing at that time, and once he had signed to fight Michael Moorer, we spent months discussing off and on what could happen in that fight. And I told him that I was of the opinion that there was no way that he could beat Michael Moorer. I told him, George, he's a southpaw, he's a mover. Evander Holyfield couldn't find him in the ring, and Holyfield is much more mobile than you. I don't think you have any chance of beating Michael Moorer. And he said to me, did George Foreman, over and over, you watch, somewhere in the late rounds, he'll come and stand in front of me and let me knock him out. And for the first 9 rounds. It was all Moorer. He was winning every round. He was confusing George. He was doing what he wanted to do. And in the 10th round, either Moorer got careless or George had a plan in his mind that he had executed perfectly. And just as he had said to me, Moorer came and stood in front of him, and George knocked him out. And as referee Joe Cortez was counting over Moorer, and it was abundantly clear to me that Moorer wasn't going to get up, once again I'm searching in my mind for a phrase that would describe what had taken place there. And all I could think of was George having told me over and over and over what he thought would happen in the fight. And I said, it happened, and that's my most famous call. There were 3 fights between Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward. They were seen somewhat as journeyman fighters. Certainly they weren't the ultra-skilled stars who go on to the greatest success in the sport, but they were both entertaining fighters who were known to give the crowds their money's worth. And the first fight took place at one of the Connecticut casinos, and it was unbelievably blood-curdling, unbelievably combative. It was a close fight, very difficult to score. When I stood up at the end of the 10th round, my stomach was so tightly knotted, so gripped with tension from what I had been watching that it hurt to stand up, to go and stand in front of the camera and do the closing elements of the telecast. I'd never had that experience before. And later I walked out of the arena into the hallway and I ran into Arturo Gatti's manager, Pat Lynch, who was distraught. And I said, "Why are you upset?" And he said, "Well, I can't believe we didn't win the fight." And I said, "Pat, no one who follows boxing will remember, even 6 months from now, who won or lost this fight, because both fighters have been elevated by the experience of what they did here. And of course, they went on to fight twice more. Those were also terrific fights, particularly the third one was a truly great fight. And as the result of 36 or 34 rounds, I should say, of literally trying to take each other apart with their fists, they became blood brothers, as close as 2 men could be. Mickey wound up giving the eulogy at Arturo's funeral and training him for the last 2 fights of his career. So it was one of those amazing demonstrations of the degree to which great fighters become blood brothers when they've faced each other over a long period of rounds in mayhem and bloody, difficult, painful fights.
Well, it's that time again. That's right, it's time for our SI Now full-on feature countdown to the new year in no particular order of greatness because, well, we like them all. Long before he took his talent to the Bay Area or made his name in OKC, Kevin Durant played ball in the Emerald City for the bygone Seattle Supersonics. In our 4th favorite feature of the year, Sports Illustrated senior writer Chris Ballard follows KD back to Seattle, the city that still has a piece of Durant's heart.
As fans gather to get one more autograph, the players oblige without protest, knowing full well what the fan base is going through.
As a fan growing up, if they say they're going to take the Wizards out of D.C. and we wouldn't have a team anymore, I feel the same way.
For Kevin Durant, the city of Seattle has always been special. It was his first NBA home, the place where his career began. And earlier this fall, he had a homecoming of sorts. The last great Supersonic and newly minted Warriors star forward gave hundreds of inner-city Seattle children a gift, a refurbished basketball court. Afterwards, I spoke to him about his foundation, his motivation, and the challenge that lies ahead.
When was the last time you played an actual outdoor hoops game?
Probably last summer.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I try to get outdoors a lot and play, and that's how I was raised. So it's always been a part of me. That's why I'm so, excited to, build this court here in Seattle and for the people here in Seattle. So playing outdoors has always been a big part of who I am.
And you were just mentioning you've got one now in Berlin,
yes,
Austin. How far do you see taking this?
This is one thing we wanted to start off my foundation with something small to impact the communities in a small way, and and as we keep elevating our goal and our mission, we want to continue to clean up these neighborhoods. So I think this is a good start for us, and so I see it expanding over hopefully the whole country, man. So I'm excited about it, but we want to continue to keep elevating young people and seeing how we can impact their lives forever.
When I spoke to you in 2010, you were studying social work and education. And so it makes me think there's a root to this that goes back pretty far, this interest. Where would you trace it? Where's the origin of it, your interest in helping out kids?
Well, just relationships, just being in different relationships and having different sets of friends and that believe in different things and that were raised different ways. I've really grown to love, the maturation of a person. And, I think the only way that, a kid can grow is if he gets taught, by someone. So I'm really, really big on that, and I want to leave an impact and a memory that can one day spark something big. It's really huge for me. So I know how important those small moments are, and I try to be the person that provides them.
You could say today was a day we couldn't avoid. NBA owners say Seattle can say so long to the Sonics. In a meeting in New York City, they approved the Sonics move to Oklahoma City.
You ever think back on how your life would be different if the team had never moved?
I think about it all the time, and just being here, the fans, the community, the leaders here in Seattle, they all embrace, the team and the players. So I can imagine growing up here, basically. I was 19 when I started here, so growing up here would have definitely been amazing. I'd have learned a lot and met a lot of great people and really been into this city, to really call this city home. So. But hey, other things happen, and but I still feel really attached to this city.
And I imagine you'd probably like to see them get a team back again?
That's what every player wants to see, especially the guys that live here. They stick together and they fight for their city and they fight for each other, and they one big family here. So you can feel that when you come around this community, and it's just an amazing feeling. So me along with every other NBA player wishes the team comes back here.
It's interesting. I interviewed Kobe a couple of years ago, age 35, and I said, Kobe, it feels like you are doing what most guys do when they hit about 75. They get to that screw it phase of life. I'm just going to say whatever I feel, right?
Yeah.
Screw it. I don't care anymore. I wonder for you, I sense you're getting more confidence and distance. Do you see a point coming where you hit that screw it phase as far as I'm just going to say what I think, radical honesty?
I wouldn't say that. Because sometimes what I feel ain't shouldn't be portrayed to the rest of the world, but I'm starting to hit a point where I'm getting a grasp of real life and the difference between real life and basketball lifestyle. So yeah, and sometimes that comes with being more transparent and more open and more open-minded to different things. So yeah, I'm almost at that stage.
How does Kevin Durant fit in with the Warriors and that incredibly talented core that was already here?
Well, I haven't made the decision yet, but he might start.
Hey, he already signed the contract, so whatever you want to do.
What have you learned about Steve Kerr so far?
He gets life. He gets what's important in life, and he gets perspective. But also on top of that, he's a great creative coach who's going to allow his players to elevate and grow, but we all got to do it together.
One thing you can steal from Steph's game, what would it be?
I think we do things differently. I love the way he approaches the game. I love his mindset and how he's just so free and carefree out there, and he plays with that joy. You can just see it in his face. So, that's probably one thing I would try to probably rub off on me more than anything.
The joy for the game?
Yeah, just pure joy and not worrying about anything else.
Now you're such a better defensive player than then, too. Are you looking forward to being an anchor of that defense?
I'm looking forward to just going out there and being the best player I can be, working hard as I can every single day. Whatever comes in between that, it comes in between it. But I know what type of player I am. I know what I bring to the table, and I know if I prepare and work as hard as I can, all that stuff will come to light, and you'll see the type of player I am.
If I told you right now the Warriors would win the title, but you would average 18 points per game for this season, would you take it?
Yeah.
14?
Yeah.
Is there a number?
No, I'm just playing. I don't even want to put a number on it, average or I'm just playing, The ball's going to find the best shot. I think that's what makes this team really good. The game's going to tell you what to do. So I can't even really say, but if I'm on a team, I want to win. That's the most important thing.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
I wonder what the future holds for the NBA in Seattle. We'll have to hang on and find out. Moving to college football, before he was an All-Pro running back for the Houston Oilers and the Tennessee Titans, Eddie George made his name amassing carries for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And in 1995, George ran all the way to a Heisman Trophy honor. Recently, Eddie stopped by the studio to talk about that storybook season. In 1995, Eddie George captured the 6th Heisman Trophy in Ohio State Buckeye history. Eddie George is here to relive that historic year. It's our flashback adrenaline performance. It's presented by Toyota. Let's go play. It's not that long ago, Eddie. What do you remember about the Saturday night of winning the Heisman when they call your name and you had received that award?
Man, well, that day I was on pins and needles, as you can imagine. Didn't know which way it was going to go. My mom, my family came up to the ceremony, and I didn't have a speech prepared because it was a tight race, and I didn't want to jinx it by preparing. But I kind of prepared when I was 12 years old back then.
Okay.
So I had an idea, but it was I remember just sitting there, and we went through our whole ordeal, the whole production of ESPN, and them go interviewing each candidate and so forth to get into their backstory and so forth, their history. And when it came time to do the announcement, my heart was just pounding, and what seemed like was a 2-minute commercial break seemed like 30 minutes. And then he gets back, and I forgot who did it at the time, but he comes up and he opens up the envelope, says, and the 1995 Heisman Trophy winner is Eddie George from DOIC, the anticipation.
Yes, of course.
So,
it's drama.
Right, the drama. And once he said it, I just kind of burst into tears, and all these memories just came rushing back of me being in high school and working out in the middle of the night, with the lights out on a practice field by myself, working on my moves. And,
wow.
Studying film of the great running backs, and going back to my struggles at Ohio State when I fumbled twice as a freshman, never to see the field again to my junior year. Just all of those things just came rushing back for me in that moment, like, wow, I made it.
That's such a great picture you just painted for us, thinking about you probably in a high school field now in Philadelphia somewhere, just working on stuff. During that season, you had one game that really stood out above the rest, and that was against Illinois. Did you ever have another game that matched what you were able to do that day and give you that same feeling?
I've hit that moment a couple times as a professional, but that's when you're in a zone then. That day I was in a zone. It was cold, but it didn't feel cold. It was loud, but I didn't hear anything. All I heard was my breath, and everything else just kind of slowed down. And I could do no wrong. The offensive line, we were both in sync with each other. The chemistry was right. And it was just perfection that day. And that's a moment in time that I always try to relive, even in my professional day now as an entrepreneur or actor or so forth, is to really be in the moment and to listen and to just be and read and react and respond. And that moment was incredible.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. You're here on behalf of the Wendy's High School Heisman, which is giving $10,000 of scholarship money to the best men and women coming out of high school, scholar athlete. It's a fantastic award. Eddie George, thank you for reliving your Heisman campaign, I guess, and winning the award.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
It was fun talking to Eddie George, and that's going to do it for this Tuesday edition of SI Now. Tomorrow, former Mets GM Steve Phillips and Vin Scully will bring a little bit of spring to this holiday season. Baseball will be the order of the day. You won't want to miss it. It starts at 1 p.m. Eastern. But until then, stick with SI.com for all your latest news, and give us a follow on Twitter at SI Now Live. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow.